what is the widow's penalty, and how do I protect my spouse from it?
Okay, so this is a subject that really I think is underappreciated. It's not being talked about enough. There is a aspect of our tax code that is wildly unfair.
Hmm.
Okay, and I'm seeing it on a daily basis within the clientele, and I've been trying like mad to get everybody to kind of understand what this is and how this works and how you might be able to deal with it before you get kind of stuck.
Hmm.
Okay, so we do have a great visual here, which we'll show you. Uh, so we've got, Jill and Bill, all right? And so Jill has 24,000 right there in the middle of Social Security. Bill has 48,000, and between the two of them, they have 60,000 a year of required minimum distribution.
Hmm.
Okay, taxes under the married joint filing taxes, uh, federal taxes in this case would be $11,053. Probably standard deduction, all that kind
Yeah.
of thing, right? Now, Bill passes away. The larger Social Security stays,
Hmm.
right? The smaller one disappears. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's essentially how it works.
Yeah.
So the 48,000 stays the 24,000. So Jill now has less income by 24,000.
Hmm.
Still has to take the required minimum distributions because no matter who owned them, now Jill owns them,
Yep.
right? And so they're all under one person. And now Jill is filing tax returns as a single taxpayer, not as a dual taxpayer. Jill's taxes are $17,000.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
in total, she loses 24,000, and then
right,
she has to pay additional 6,000. So she has basically 30,000 swing.
30,000 swing. It's huge. And so here's what I'm seeing, and here's the problem with this. And this really revolves mostly around RMDs because there's more problems than just tax. You also have Medicare.
Hmm.
And so Medicare is means tested, and they'll allow you to have a bit more income if you're married than if you're not.
Yep.
And so what happens then is all of a sudden you might have been paying the lower amount of Medicare, and a single person's already paying more. And it's pretty dramatic. I mean, you can get 50% more Medicare costs pretty quick. Um, and in this particular case, for Jill, that could be permanent because they have this required minimum distribution that needs to come out every single year. Um, and so here's the big thing that I'm seeing that you just need to think about in advance. You have a couple, you both have 401ks, you're both working, you're building up this money, you've built up quite a bit of money, it's millions of dollars, you retire, right? It's fine. You get to required minimum distribution age, right? Start taking money out, but you're under joint tax returns. You're under joint, testing for Medicare. You still might end up paying more if you have enough in your 401ks, but it's still okay.
Hmm.
One passes away, and all of those 401k assets and IRA assets combine into one person's name, in this case, Jill.
Yep.
And she ends up as if she earned all of that herself. Because that's different. If it's just you and you have that 401k and it's $5 million, great. But it wasn't. In this case, let's say you both had 2.5 million, and you were able to kind of split that because of it's a joint tax return. Now all $5 million is in one tax return, and somebody like that is paying max Medicare and getting hit heavier on taxes, even though they lost a chunk of their income because some Social Security disappeared.
Yeah, it's interesting because the tax system basically thinks, okay, you have two people, so you just double it.
Right.
But in real life, if you have one person pays probably like 60 to 75% of what two people pay because a lot of those costs you overlap.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so it's kind of a
It,
system.
it's a mistake. There should be an adjustment. There should be an RMD, reduction based on the fact that it was two people that acquired that money that's being forced out. There should be, hey, part of my income is coming from my former spouse that's maybe somehow accounted for on the tables for Medicare, because that's the one that people really get upset about is Medicare. They see it every month. It's a big,
Yeah.
big dollar amount, but the taxes are there too. And and how do you deal with that? Well, number one, consider a life insurance policy, because people aren't. They think, oh, I got plenty of money, I don't need life insurance. Well, you're just going to saddle your single spouse with all of this taxes and all of this extra money for Medicare, because the taxes went up 6,000, the Social Security went down 24. It's a $30,000 differential. There
Yeah.
could be another $6,000 differential or so on the Medicare also. And so think about that. Maybe it's worth having a life insurance policy to take care of your spouse for that excess expense and loss of income that's going to come. So that's one way. A lot of people don't like insurance. Maybe you don't qualify. Maybe you're too old by the time you hear this. That's fine. Another concept is to try to start to fairly aggressively move your 401k IRA type assets into Roth IRA type assets.
Yeah, with tax rates being at historic lows.
Yes.
Maybe it's while you're still joint filing, it's a good time that you can maybe start to pick at it. You don't have to do all at once, but take chunks at a time.
Anything you could do would be better. If you can lower that RMD to 50,000, that's better. I mean, it's just less tax, and it is possibly less Medicare also. So ideally, you start to do those conversions before 73 when they start making you take the required minimum distributions, and you just basically you could take what would equivalently be the required minimum distribution out and start early. Yeah, you're going to pay tax. And yes, but you do get tax-free growth, and there's no required minimum distribution on that Roth IRA for your spouse. So you could effectively eliminate this problem before you pass away if you were aggressive enough on your motion on required minimum distributions. But even if you can't, anything you can do is better. So life insurance, but planning around this possible event. I guarantee you, if you stop the average person who had a couple that had, even if just one person has the big IRA, like let's say Mr. worked, he has the $5 million IRA, Mrs. stayed home, it doesn't matter. When one of them passes away, there's only going to be a single filing tax return, single income. You're going to pay more taxes. You're going to pay more, on Medicare. And so anybody who has that scenario needs to be thinking about what's going to happen when one of them passes away, and they're not. They're not doing insurance because, we got $5 million. We don't need insurance.
Yeah.
And you're right, except for this problem. And they maybe don't need a lot of insurance, to be honest, because this isn't a huge problem. But believe me, this is something I can get a couple of my clients on the line here really quick, and they will be really adamant about this because they already are. They understand what's happened to them, but it's already too late. Their husband or wife has already passed away. And so I'm trying to get out there and let people know in advance that this is something to think about. This is something to deal with in advance while you can, because it's pretty important, and it just makes your retirement so much more enjoyable if you've got this part figured out. And it's really kind of an irritant if you don't. So it's a great question as far as that goes.